Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some interesting cards trending on the market because of their applications within the upcoming format. So we just had the Duelist Advanced sneak peek this past weekend. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. I was busy doing Pokemon Go Fest instead. I got like 79 shinies over 2 days. It was pretty cool. Anyways, the NAWCQ is less than 2 weeks away, so players are looking to grab things as they prepare for the event, which is causing some price shifts right now. But we also have players that are not too excited for Nationals, but they're really excited to see Yummy, Draco Tail, and or Canine, and there's going to be cards related to those themes to keep an eye out for as people look to scoop them up at Nationals in preparation for the upcoming formats. Let's get started. So first off, we're talking about a couple of cards related to Lunalites, and we're starting off with Lunalite Kaleidochick. So I was looking at some cards from Duelist Advance, and Tom was also explaining some of the Lunalite stuff to me, and the more I look at it, the more I think that Lunalite actually has a really solid chance to make a ton of top spots at the NAWCQ. It's able to bring out Liger Dancer really consistently and through interruption, and once it sticks, it's a really difficult card to out for any of the other decks in the game right now. Now with Lunalites, most of the cards were printed in pretty low rarities, and they are relatively easy to find. That said though, we are seeing prices climb with the holo upgrades of cards, as well as with cards that were holo in their original printing. Now Kaleidochick is one example of such a card. It's able to send a Lunalite from the deck or extra deck to the graveyard as a cost, and then copy the name of what you dump, and it's also able to add polymerization from your graveyard back to your hand. So this card is really useful. It can dump something like a Yellow Martin to revive itself out of the graveyard. You could dump something and add it back with a Gold Leo if you have both on the field, or you can copy Leo Dancer's name to make Liger Dancer even more easily. So this is a card that was a common at first and no one really cared about it at all, but it did get an ultra rare upgrade in Battles of Legend Hero's Revenge. That version was literally bulk before. You could get that for like 10 cents. Now you're looking at having to pay $2 to $3 per ultra rare copy of this card. I don't know how many of this you're supposed to play. I think they ran 3 of them back in the day, and for recent lists I've seen some people online using 3, others using just 1, so we might just have to wait for a little bit to see what people are actually doing with the deck. If you've been playing the game for a long time, you might just want to dig up all of your old Lunalite cards out and have them ready to move, because I'm sure that over the next couple of weeks, even at your locals and such, the Lunalite cards are going to be extremely highly sought after. So one other card I'm keeping an eye on here for Lunalites, we have Foolish Burial Goods. Now this is a card that definitely always has the potential to be good. It sends any spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard, and there are just so many cards in the game that have effects where you can activate them by banishing them from the graveyard. It's just a matter of finding the right deck for Foolish Burial Goods to really pop off for. I think that a year or 2 ago, players were using this in Tier Limit to send Rainbow Bridge of Salvation and then search for a field spell and a Crystal Beast. Well, now players are looking at using this card in Lunalite. Lunalites have 2 really strong cards that you can send to the graveyard and then use their effects right away. Lunalite Perfume lets you banish it to discard a card and then search for any Lunalite from your deck, while Serenade Dance lets you send a card from your hand to the graveyard to summon a Lunalite out of the deck. So in essence, Foolish Burial Goods is both a starter and an extender for the Lunalite deck, assuming that you don't get hit with something like a Lancia. The only really downside here is that Goods is a hard once per turn, so drawing multiples of this card can be pretty bad. However, Lunalite is getting a ton of hype leading up to Nationals, so players are buying up the higher rarity printings. It has 2 secret rare printings, the original from Raging Tempest, and then it got a reprint in the tins from that year. For either of those, you're looking at anywhere from $10 to $15 per copy. The other holo printings are also worth a surprising amount. We have the Battles of Legends ultra rares coming in at $4 to $5, and then we have the super rares from Dark Saviors, which were relatively cheap actually. Those are at $2 to $3 as well. Now fortunately, the card has now received a couple of common printings, so you can still grab them for like 50 cents or so, but even then it can still be an annoying card to find. This is one of those cards that I always set aside when I'm going through bulk because it has a simple yet really strong effect that a lot of decks are going to be able to use, and this is no different now. I would definitely set them aside if you can and bring them to your locals over the next couple of weeks because players will definitely be looking for it.
I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com.
Alright, next up we have one of my favorite cards. It's number 80 Repsidity in Berserk. So I remember back when this card first came out, I used to love using it. This is a generic rank 4 Xyz monster where you can detach a material from it to banish a card from the opponent's graveyard, and you can do that twice per turn. Then once you've done that, you equip this to an Xyz monster and it gains 1200 attack points. So of course, banishing cards from your opponent's graveyard has been really powerful at a lot of different points in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. In recent years, however, number 80 has probably been a little bit too slow and just not impactful enough. However, it has recently actually found a home in Ryziel decks. Number 80 has popped up with the emergence of Mitsurugi and Heraldic Beast Ryziel variants. Ryziel is actually able to use these engines to get more rank 4 monsters onto the board than ever before, and Repsidity and Berserk can be a very solid option. This is a great way to hit key cards out of the opponent's graveyard and just cut them out of the rotation. Against something like Mitsurugi, you could hit Ritual and Murakumo. Against a really strong deck like Orchist, if they don't have Babble Up or you shut down Galatea I and Galatea, then you can hit cards like Heart Pourer and Dingirsu out of the graveyard and just try to get rid of those cards permanently. And then of course against Malice, obviously you don't want to trigger their effects, but if they've already used their banished effects and then they're in the graveyard just sitting there and you're still able to push through the board, you could banish them and hopefully cut them off from those cards for the rest of the game as well. So this card was originally a rare in Primal Origin. Those copies are only going for around $3 to $4 now, which is, still a fair bit for something that's just a rare. The Super is what really did spike harder. That's the card's only other printing. It's only holo printing, and that came out back in 2014, which is more than a decade ago. So those supers are now going to cost you around $8 to $10 a piece, and there's actually very few near mint copies available on the market. It's an interesting tech card. I find the card really, really cool. I just don't know if it's better than all of the other rank 4 options that you could be running in your extra deck. Definitely check to see if you have this card in your bulk somewhere, because this wasn't a very expensive card for quite a while. If you do, it's probably worth offloading it now before it gets a reprint that will bring both of those prices crashing way down. Alright, so speaking of countering the meta, we have a Floodgate card next, and it's Mask of Restrict. So this is a really simple card that debuted back in Labyrinth of Nightmare, and it simply stops both players from tributing cards. I believe the last time this card saw play in the meta was actually against Monarchs back in around 2016 or so. Now, Mask of Restrict has actually emerged once again as a counter to the Mitsurugi strategy. The Mitsurugi engine is one of the strongest in the game right now, as it's combined with decks like Ryziel and Orchist. Honestly, I would argue that it is the strongest in the game right now. It's definitely either that or Fiendsmith. Mask of Restrict, of course, shuts down the engine completely. Mitsurugi can't ritual summon, they can't loop the ritual monsters that are on the field, and they can't even get off both effects of prayers. Now, one other thing here that I do want to acknowledge that might be an application of the card, though I'm not too sure about it, is that this card could be really useful as protection in the Lunaite strategy as well. Lunaite aims to end on Liger Dancer, which is unaffected by card effects, so a lot of players might be turning in the current format to cards like Lava Golem, Kurikara Divincarnate, or the Kaijus to be able to out Liger Dancer by tributing it, and Mask of Restrict, if you flip that up early, it just stops them from being able to do that as well. So if you are playing Lunalites, this might be a really strong side deck option when you're going first. Anyways, Mask of Restrict only has a couple of holo printings. The Labyrinth of Nightmare Ultras, obviously the first eds are expensive because they're collectible, and then you have the Unlimited Ultras that are around $20 to $25. The card's only other holo printing is actually as a super rare from an old OTS tournament pack. Those are going to cost you around $18 to $20 each, and there's barely any available on TCG Player as of when I'm filming this. And then after that, the rest are just various common printings, but even the ones from that zombie structure deck that are relatively new, those are still gonna run you like $5 each, so anywhere from $5 to $7 depending on which common printing you're looking at. Definitely a cool card that could be really strong if Mitsurugi continues to get more and more popular, especially as the things around it get hit. I don't know if it's something that we're actually going to see come up at the NAWCQ, but it's definitely an interesting card to dig up out of your bulk because it does have some pretty solid value and some pretty interesting applications in the current format. Okay, the next card I just want to touch on briefly, it is Ghost Ship. Now this is a really random card that's a rare from back in Generation Force, which is the first core set that Xyz came out in. This is a level 5 monster where you can summon it by banishing a light monster from your graveyard. So this card is apparently being talked about as an extender in the K9 deck. It's just an easy to bring out level 5 body that you can then make an Xyz play with. Now that alone I don't think is enough to say that the card should even be considered. However, this card also happens to be a light fiend monster, which means it can be used to make Fiendsmith's Requiem and go into the whole Fiendsmith engine on its own. Now, I don't know if Fiendsmith K9 is even going to be a thing here in the TCG because we have Vanquish Soul K9 and because Fiendsmith over in the OCG really isn't as strong because they have hits like Engraver to 1. Either way, their results don't always necessarily translate over here. The two games are just like really different. I just really hope that they finally do hit the Fiendsmith cards because I think they've been around in the game for a little bit too long and the engine is just so strong and splashable. Anyways, Ghost Ship has just the one rare printing, and so we're actually now seeing the card moving for around $6 to $8 per copy. I feel like this is the type of filler card that Konami might include in Justice Hunters itself, so it's not something that I'd go and necessarily try to pick up. However, if you do find some in your bulk, this is a card that I would try to dig up and look at moving if you can over the course of the next month or so. On to the next one, we next have Windup Arsenal Zenmayo. So of course this is technically a windup card, I don't think they really make this. It's a generic rank 5 Xyz monster and it has a really simple effect where you detach a material from it to pop 2 set cards on the field. Now with this one, it is just sort of a generic utility removal card. There's not really too many back row decks in the game right now, but this is more just to have the rank 5 toolbox option. And of course, the K9 cards are able to make rank 5s easily, so having access to a card like this in a simplified game state, or maybe against a really back row heavy rogue deck, can definitely be really strong. Now aside from that, I don't really see any specific reason as to why Zenmayo would be trending. This card has a few different printings. It was a rare and an ultra. Both of those printings are basically bulk and they were really easy to pick up. It's just the original secret rares from back in Order of Chaos that have spiked in price. Even just a couple of months ago, they were only $4 to $5 a piece, but over those couple of months, they have climbed and are now at $25 per copy. This isn't a card I see being too popular over in the OCG lists. I don't think I've seen a single OCG list that actually topped playing this card, and something like this, I don't think that this is going to suddenly be good because it's the TCG, right? This isn't the type of card that would see that sort of difference. So if you do have these original copies, I would definitely recommend moving them while they are at this inflated price. And finally, the last card I'm taking a look at here is Song of the Dominators, and I'm actually going to say this is a card you might want to consider grabbing. So this is related to Dominus Purge and Dominus Impulse, being a trap that you can activate from your hand. With this one, it does work differently from the Dominus cards. You have to have no monsters in your graveyard in order to activate it from your hand. Also, if you do, you can't activate monster effects in your hand, graveyard, or banish pile until the end of the next turn, which means if you activate this during your opponent's turn from hand, you can't use monster effects during your turn, which is a big restriction. So this card negates the effects of a monster that activated its effect on the field, but it doesn't target the monster. So you could do this to something like a Rescue Rabbit. Now, even though Rescue Rabbit banishes itself, it was activated on the field, so Song of the Dominators would be able to negate its effect. The cool thing is that if you negate the monster's effect and you have a trap in your graveyard, you can search for a Dominus card, so Dominus Purge or Dominus Impulse. Now, generally, I do think that this card's hand effect is way too crippling, so I wouldn't use it for that, and I wouldn't put this card in going second. Unless you're playing some sort of like stun deck, I just don't think the card's going to be that useful for being relied on as a hand trap. However, we are starting to see this card actually being used as a side deck option for going first alongside Dominus Purge. I believe it was in a couple of successful Yummy decks over in the OCG, they were actually main decking Purge and then siding in a set of Song of the Dominators as a going first card, which is really cool because hopefully Song of the Dominators can turn into 2 interruptions instead of just 1. Now this is a brand new card out of Alliance Insight, and it's actually still reasonably cheap at around $12 to $15 per copy. Personally, I think this card has a crazy ton of potential, especially as a going first card if your deck does have a trap card in engine. This just might be worth picking up a few extra copies of slowly over the next couple of months. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Hopefully you guys all did really well at your sneak peek events this past weekend. Sorry if my voice sounds a little bit odd, I'm just getting over a cold as well. But I've been studying for exams, so a little bit behind on things, but we will be bringing you guys a bunch more content within the next couple of weeks. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.